Hi, everyone. This is Krista Moore with The Krista Moore Show. I am really honored today to have such a special guest. And some of you may know her as she is a new author and a best-selling author at that. And her name is Annie Franceschi. So, Annie, are you out there that you can put your webcam on and we can see you?
Yes, I am right
All
here.
right. Hi, Annie. Great to see you.
Thank you for having me.
I'm excited because the timing's perfect because you just did launch your book. I'd like you to do a brief introduction to our audience, just let them know kind of your little backstory, and then we'll go ahead and get started with the interview.
Of course. Well, I'm Annie Franceschi. I'm a brand creator, speaker, and author as of just a few weeks ago. My first book, Permission to Try, 11 Things You Need to Hear When You're Scared to Change Your Life, has just come out. It is available on Amazon right now. But my background is that I always wanted to be in the movie industry. So I ended up working in Hollywood and realized that I had a passion for helping real people tell their story. So after about 5 years of that, I quit a dream job, moved here to Durham, North Carolina, and started Greatest Story Creative. And that's a branding agency where I help small business owners tell their story, show their value, and grow their business through branding.
I'm sure that there's a story behind this dream job and then quitting and leaving it. And I'd like you to share that a little bit with us. Like, what was going through your mind? You were following your dreams, and then all of a sudden you realized, hey, there's something else out there for me. Tell us about that.
Right. So I think that, most of us grow up and we think we have to do what we love and we go after that one path. So for me, that was definitely the film industry, right? So I grew up loving movies and I thought I'm going to be in Hollywood. And that's what I did. I went and pursued that path. I moved to Los Angeles, California after graduating from Duke here in Durham. And I thought everything was going really well, but I sort of realized that as I started to get more and more of the kinds of jobs I thought I really wanted, in particular, a job at Disney where I was designing story presentations for films like Maleficent and Cinderella. I got some of that dream work, and I really got that dream job that I had been working for almost 5 years at the time. And the funny thing happened, that was when I got it, I sort of realized I didn't want it, because you start to look around and you go, well, I don't really want my boss's job, and I don't want this kind of work-life balance. And honestly, like the work that I was doing, I was working with filmmakers and working on big movies, but I wasn't changing lives. And I realized through getting what I wanted that wasn't enough of a rewarding reason to continue in that career.
When you're telling your story, it makes me recall my story as well. I remember being in corporate America. I was a VP of sales for a large corporation. And on the outside, I think everyone looked at me and thought that I was in my dream job, or why in the world would she give that up? She's at this level, but I wasn't happy there. I used to drive into work kind of with a pit in my stomach. And I think that there's a time and place when you have that realization, and then you've got to change. Was there a moment or an event that took place where you're like, I'm done?
Oh gosh. I mean, I definitely, when you said pit of your stomach, I certainly had many of those moments. I spent, the decision to leave Los Angeles actually took about a year. And there was no one particular moment that I said, I'm done. And I think we all know people who have that story, right? Where they're like, they throw up in the air and they're just like, I'm done with this. And I think my story is a little bit different in that it wasn't something like that. It was more that it was a positive thing. It wasn't a running away, I'm giving up kind of moment. It was a moment where I had a bride find my website on Google. I had started a little blog with my wedding invitations on it. And this bride named Bridget found me and said, can you help me tell my story in my wedding programs? And I thought, well, I've never, who writes wedding programs for a living? Like, I didn't realize you could do that. But she saw my wedding invitations and saw that I'd written these stories. And so she asked me to do it. And that was sort of the moment for me of seeing that there could be life outside the film industry for me in terms of a job and a business. So that was really pretty eye-opening and out of the blue. I mean, thanks, Google, right?
And you never know, too, what kind of comes across your path, right? Bridget the Bride was life-changing for you.
Yep.
What was the next step?
So for me, it was having the courage to leave. I think that, at that point, I'd finally gotten my dream job. My husband was in a very high powered, sort of on his way kind of job at CAA, which is the world's largest talent agency. Mm-hmm. And we went out to In-N-Out one night, which is In-N-Out Burger, and decided to give up our lives that we'd been working for 5 years because it was the best time to take a risk. We didn't have kids. We didn't have a mortgage. And so we sort of realized, I remember saying to him, because we were talking about his career path, I was like, look, are we leaving or not? Because if we're not leaving, I gotta emotionally change, but I'm sort of ready. I think this is the time to take the risk. If we're ever gonna do it, it's never gonna be easier than it is now. And he and I, over burgers decided to change our lives, and it's been 5 years
That's
since
awesome.
then.
Well, it's great. It's great to have a partner to be able to do that with, because it
Yes.
sure is scary to do it alone.
Yeah.
I'm curious what you were doing when you were 10.
Yeah, so I know you're passionate about your 10-year-old self. So when I was a 10-year-old, I was the creative kid. Like I was never the sports kid because I always got hit in the head with the ball, like even wiffle ball. So I was the arts kid. I was
You
always the
weren't
girl
the
who was
coordinated
drawing.
one. You were the
I was
creative one.
Yes, I was definitely the slow, creative one. But I was just always making things for people. I was always
Mhm.
writing and designing and like making logos for T-shirts and creating newsletters. And I didn't realize at the time that that was branding and marketing, which is what I do
Exactly.
now. Like I didn't know that was a job. Like get serious, right?
Yeah, I love when I ask that question about your 10-year-old self and it really percolates and you start thinking about, well, my gosh, that's what I loved and that's what I was doing, and how great to rediscover that. And now you're an entrepreneur, owning a branding company, using your creative, God-given talents. And I love when that happens, especially at such a young age. I think you're young for, I think people will admire that you've gotten to this position at such a young age. Now, next step is a book, which is just astonishing to be able to have completed a book. I know how difficult that can be.
You
Tell
do.
us about Permission to Try. Tell us about the book and kind of what's the impetus behind it. And then I'd like to walk through the three different sections for our audience. But tell us kind of why the book.
So why the book is I've always wanted to write a book since I was a little girl, but I didn't want to write and I know I want to write a series of books. So thinking I will have to start with my story and nobody wants to hear the boring memoir of I was born a curious child in Princeton, New Jersey. Like no one cares. So I was like, what can I do? How can I help people? And so I had this little idea to make Permission to Try sort of a pep talk. It is actually a pep talk about 11 sticking points that keep us stuck in from changing our lives or careers. And it is a love letter to my past self when I was stuck in the film industry and sort of realizing that my purpose wasn't what I thought it was going to be and feeling lost because I didn't know what else I was supposed to do or how I was going to change my life or if I should change my life. So it is literally if I had coffee with, say, you, Krista, and you came to me when you were thinking about leaving your corporate job, it's like, this is my best life and
Yeah,
career
I have it
advice from
right
the
here
past
too, and I have to
10
say I've
years.
been
So
enjoying it.
these are the questions I get all the time and that I share and people say, why did you quit a job at Disney? And that's Permission to Try is the answer.
That's great.
Absolutely.
So walk us through. There are like three parts to the book, and I think it's almost a program in my mind as I'm reading it.
Yes.
And I felt like it was a pep talk type book. It was actually a page turner for me as I was on the airplane. So I appreciate all the hard work that you've put into it, and you can really see the creative side. But there's some great stuff in here
Thank
that
you.
could help others that might be struggling with what's my purpose? What do I want to do? But I'm afraid. So tell us
Yeah.
about step number one. What is kind of part one?
So part one is rethink your purpose. So this is speaking to you if you are feeling stuck in your life or career and it's because you said you were going to do something, maybe you said that you had this big dream, but you're realizing that it's not what you thought it was going to be or it's not working out. And that can be a really embarrassing feeling, I think. And it's very embarrassing to admit to yourself and also to other people. And I think that's where a lot of like, what will other people say comes into play. But it's a lot about not, giving yourself some credit for where you've been and things like that to realize that it's okay to rethink your dream and to rewrite your dream, even if you told everybody this is what you were going to do. So that's really what of the three parts, that's where we start because that's the place we have to give ourselves a little bit of patience and grace that it is okay that we didn't quite figure it out just yet.
How do you get there though?
Yeah.
How does that happen? Most people get into a rut or a routine and they give up early or they think they can't. Is there any secret formula?
Well, I think the secret formula is actually the three parts. So, you start at rethink your purpose. So that's all about acknowledging that it's okay to rethink it and to start working on that. So as we're talking about, I mentioned do what you love, and everyone loves that. It's on things at Hobby Lobby on your wall. Do what you love, and I
Yeah,
used to believe in that, but I think do what you love is a little broken. It needs a little more context. So I
I
think it
have
should
I
be.
have this. Find a job you love and you'll never work again. That's my Post-it note.
Which is somewhat true. Somewhat true. I think you and I both being entrepreneurs would say, yeah, but that we work as well. We all have to do work we don't want to do. So, but I think do what you love. There's more to it. And that's why I think people have to rethink your purpose, myself included, which is sometimes it's not enough to just do what you love. It needs to be something you're good at that adds value to other people's lives. And ideally in a way that people will pay you for. That was the ingredient for me it wasn't fulfilling enough. Like I love what I did, but I wasn't changing movies. I wasn't really having an immense impact. I was just making my boss happy. And that is not enough of an impact for me.
It's funny that you mentioned that. And often we don't look at that third component, which is how can I have the greatest impact on others?
Yes.
And how can I reach them better than I am today? And I think I learned that along the way. And when you have that connection and you can feel the impact and the difference that you're making, it makes it more purposeful for sure.
And that was the contrast that I got from Bridget the Bride, if you remember. So that was the thing. I was working in this dream job, and then I was doing this little side project for her. And I was like, wow, you're part of somebody's wedding day, or you help them start a business. That's going to stick with them the rest of their lives. Like that's so much. That to me, that was such a bigger deal than like working on an Angelina Jolie movie. Like that's cool, but it wasn't really for me anyway. Like, and I think that's where you sort of, whoever it is, doesn't have to be me as an example. It has to be meaningful to you because money. I think maybe, and I'd be interested to hear your take on this, Krista, is like, is money enough? Like, is money enough of a motivator? And I think I realized through all of this is like money and sexy quotient for a job was cool, but it wasn't enough for me.
Well, I think what a lot of people discover, and a lot of people that would be listening to this probably feel the same way, is they go down a certain path because they think that that's the right direction, or someone told them, or even, we were convincing ourselves that this is what I'm supposed to be. Yeah. And then they realize it's not all that. Okay, I'm supposed to go to college, get a degree, have a family, have kids, have a corporate job, and, buy a nice car.
If you're going to one day be happy and successful. If you do, you got to do all those things. And then that one day is like the best day.
And then it doesn't happen, right?
Yeah, exactly.
What is part two? What would you say is that second part of the kind of the process of this understanding?
So if you give yourself permission to rethink your purpose, the next thing you need to give yourself permission to do is to embrace change and take action. So this is where the rubber meets the road a little bit, which is, realizing that simply put, the only way to change your life is to change it. So it's all about embracing that change is icky and awful, and it's something we just want to put off, but there's no better time than right now to do that. And I share a lot of stories from my own life and career about sort of how that plays into action, and action is the biggest takeaway in this section. And I give you some ways, there's exercises throughout the book to rethink your purpose, embrace change, and take action, to give you ways to put this into practice. And so there's actually 12 take action exercises where we're talking about, action beats talent. Action will beat talent every single time, but people don't realize it. They think that because someone's talented or amazing or acclaimed that, oh, well, I can't be them. And because they're just, born with a gold star on their head. And that's not true.
Yeah. We teach and train a lot around a topic called strategic passion. And you can have passion about a lot of things, and nothing great in this world has ever happened without it. But passion without strategy is just passion.
Correct.
But passion with strategy is action. That's when things take place. That's when movement occurs, and that's when change takes place. We were talking a little bit ago about, does there need to be an event, to maybe have you make that change? Or is it just kind of one day you just make a decision to change and to take action? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think it's a process, and I think we overthink it. So I think that we are so worried that it has to be this really big thing that we decided, like we quit our job or we sell our house, and it can be those things, but it can also be a series of a lot of little things. Like people don't realize that. And I in my experience and all the changes that I've made in my life and the risks that I've taken, they are an amalgamation of big changes, like moving across the country, and little itty bitty changes.
Little steps building up to that moment.
It's even just raising your hand and saying like, hey, I'm sort of interested in learning graphic design, or I'm thinking of starting a jewelry business. Like that has so much power if you just mention it in passing. Even that can be something small that any of us can do for free.
Yeah. I was just thinking about myself here for a moment, in two ways. I was that person that just left their corporate job without
Yeah.
something lined up because my boss pissed me off one day. But what was happening is it was building up over time, and I knew that there was going to be a breaking point, and I knew that there was a lot of changes that I needed to make. But it wasn't until that event for me that I mean, if you're down here, you can see things a little bit more clearly. And I did that self-reflection. What do I want to be
When I grow
when
up.
I grow up? What
Yeah.
did I love when I was 10? And what would I do every day if I didn't get paid? And all of those things. And that was an intentional self-discovery that started to create action
Yep.
and change. Now, the other piece of that is I was the major breadwinner. Then I left my husband a few months later. So the action had to happen. I had to build a business pretty
Yeah, there's a
quickly.
little bit of, and it has a way of doing that. So you do little things, right? And then it sort of snowballs. So you
Yeah.
sort of get the momentum going of that,
Well, and
right?
I felt very guilty at that time because I wasn't supposed to be like happy, but I was so free and felt so free to be me. I
Isn't
had
that
to
a powerful
pretend that,
statement that I
yeah,
wasn't supposed to be happy?
I
Like,
wasn't
well,
supposed to
so
be happy.
what?
I was
Yeah,
supposed to be
like
miserable. Well,
who
I
says you
wasn't.
have to suffer? Yeah.
That's interesting. What about the third piece to the pie?
So the third piece is, people can get behind like rethinking your purpose and okay, I gotta, embrace change, take action. But why we don't take action, why we don't embrace change or give ourselves permission is because we're afraid. And so the last section of the book is face your failures, feelings, and fears. And it's really all about those F's, all the F words, right? The failures, feelings, and fears. Because these are the things that really trip us up. We get really motivated to do something, and then it's those doubts and those powerful fears of, well, I'm afraid to face how I really feel about this, or I'm worried that I'm going to fail, or what are other people going to tell me and say to me if I change my life, and or if I do something that they don't like, or that they don't get about me. Are they going to think I'm stupid? So this is a collection of stories and exercises that are all about sort of the big F words of our lives that keep us from changing them, that keep us from giving ourselves permission.
What do you have to say to those people that use the excuse, which I do sometimes,
Mm,
of worrying about what other people think or have to say? And that's what holds
yeah.
you back from, doing something that you've always dreamt of doing.
I think that was the biggest question, the biggest worry I had in my mind, because I
Mhm.
think for years I knew that the film industry wasn't really for me, but I was really afraid to admit it to myself and especially to other people, because I was terrified people would think I was an idiot, right? Like all the things you've already sort of touched on, like we all feel that way. We're all
Mhm.
worried about what other people are going to think. And what I say in the book is, and the answer to that is one of the sections of a chapter, which is people will surprise you and you should let them. And that was really what I learned when I told my team and when I told all the people who worked at Disney that I was leaving my dream
They were
job.
probably happy for you.
Well, and so I thought they would think I was nuts. So like I'm
Mhm.
leaving my job, I'm moving across the country, I don't have another job lined up, I don't know what I'm going to do. So I was like, well, they're going to think I'm an idiot to leave this kind of job. And everybody I talked to had one of two reactions. And one is exactly what you said, which is congratulations, I'm so
Mhm.
excited for you. You're going to do great. All of that wonderful feeling stuff. But then the second part was they were jealous. They were
Yeah.
jealous. And people have been in the company for 20 years who felt like they couldn't leave because they'd been there so long. And they're like, well, I want to do that. I want to follow my dream. And they were really envious of me. And I think really honestly, if I had known what the reaction would have been, I might have made changes sooner in my life. So that's something I've become a believer in through taking risks. And the other piece of that too is that sometimes you're gonna tell people and they're not gonna
Mhm.
get it. So that's also hard to deal with. But what do I say about that is you have to sort of remind yourself where that advice is coming from. You know,
It brings to mind something as you're describing that, Annie. I grew up in a household or in a neighborhood where you need to be worried about what the neighbors think, or
Yeah.
what other people think. And that was just kind of ingrained in us growing up. And I did worry about that at different times in my life, and why, I don't know. But I faced that fear, and I started to take these challenges, these personal challenges that put me outside of my comfort zone, where I could actually say, I don't care what other people think.
Yeah.
And I'll give you a really, really good example of that. And this is my motto. It was 2 years ago. I started this kind of personal reflection about this kind of wound about worrying about what other people think and how it
Yeah.
might be holding me back from doing things. And I started this motto of be you, not them.
Mm.
That I just need to be authentic in me and who I am, because I don't have to be somebody else, or act or be a certain way because I'm a business coach or an entrepreneur or a female sales leader.
Hmm.
And I kind of just set myself free from that. I
Yeah.
did it in two different ways. And I'm wondering, when you went through that, did you feel like this sense of freedom and authenticity?
Um, I don't know if I felt those things. I think I did it in terms of when I told people, and I heard what their reaction was at Disney. But
Yeah.
I think the example, I think we've heard the story, and I think you gave a great example of like, well, I don't care what other people think. And I would tell you, to be quite honest, I still care what people think. I'm a big people pleaser. I try to, but it's part of a lot of what I do is the strategy, is thinking through how are people going to receive something. But one of the biggest lessons I learned about this topic is really how to react when family and friends discourage you, because that's really it's easier to say screw it if it's nobody, but it's your best friend. Like, and I had some really close friends who like didn't get it, who I was debating taking the business full time, and they were like, can't you do both, can't you take this job and also do Greatest Story, and they were worried, and that's sort of what I realized, is that they were worried, and it wasn't a decision they would make because it was a big financial and emotional risk. And I've learned that like they love me and they just didn't want to see me fail, but I needed to do it. And I needed to be the first one of my friends to take a leap like that so that they could see it's possible. Like,
Yeah, and you could set that example.
right. And you don't have to, fault your family and friends. Sometimes they just aren't going to get it at first, and you still have to jump in. And I'm very happy to say that like all of them went on to be incredibly supportive of what I did. And I'm really glad that I took that risk, even though not everybody bought in, especially the people I really love.
What do you think is holding most people back when it comes to what is the fear? Is it failure? Is it
I think
feeling?
that's the biggest one. I
Mhm.
think we're all really afraid to fail. And that makes sense. It's ingrained in us, all the time that, winning is success and failure is failure. And we don't want to be seen as a failure. We don't want to feel like a loser. We don't want to look like we don't have it all together. But here's the secret. None of us have this figured out. Like,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's the
But
worst kept secret in
yeah,
the world.
I went to a women's conference, women sales professionals, and it was a fabulous group of women business owners that are in the sales field and training and consulting. A lot of mentors and people that I really respect and look up to. And it was a whole different ball game when I got there. We were all real, and we
Yeah.
all have our challenges. We're not all perfect. And it was a great group to hang with, because everybody was being true to themselves.
Yeah.
And it made me realize that, not everybody does have it all together.
That there's always more to the story. That's one of the biggest things that I've learned, and one of the biggest things I try to share, because I think that you can look at somebody who's like really successful in business, for example, and think like, oh, they have it made and they have a gold star on their head and I can't, and you sort of use that as an excuse not to push yourself forward, but you don't know what they've been through. And there's so many challenges that we all face, myself included. And that's part of why I share in the book, I share a lot of vulnerable stories and things that don't make me look very good, that make me look like I don't know what the heck I'm doing, because it's true. Like I'm still learning and relearning the cycle of giving myself permission. And that's why this isn't a book of like, here's how you do it. It's here's how I've done it. Here's how some ways you can get started on doing it. But we are in this together, this
That's
failure
right.
thing, and there's no way out but through.
And it doesn't just happen once in a lifetime. It's a
No,
constant, right?
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think we both experienced that in our careers, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
What would be maybe some final advice that you would give our listeners? if they're looking to make a change and they're afraid.
So we were talking, I think, it can feel really intimidating to take a really big risk or make a really big change. And so I can tell you something really quick that is simple, inexpensive. It is free to do. And you have an opportunity to do this every single day of your life. And that is simply to tell people the next thing you want to try. I call this don't keep your dreams a secret. It's not doing you any good if nobody knows that you want to start a podcast, or nobody knows that you want to start a jewelry business or become an interior decorator, or maybe even just learn Spanish. If you start to tell more people these things that you want to try, the magic that will start to happen in your life is that people naturally want to help you. So people are going to suddenly start, oh, do you want to go to this event with me? Or you should meet this person, or here's this book I bought for you because you told me about that. This secret alone has led me to being on a podcast, getting an amazing business relationship that led me to $10,000 of clients just because I was like, spoke a dream. It helped me turn myself into a professional speaker because I was afraid to try that. And I told somebody I was thinking of doing it. So this is a very powerful piece of advice, but just don't forget it, which is please don't keep your dreams a secret. And if you want to take us up on it, I'm sure Krista would be happy to join me in this, but I'm sure Krista is going to share our information. And if you want to tell us what your dream is, we'd be happy to hear it.
That's great. And I think just getting people to get to the point where they are comfortable saying it out loud and putting that commitment out there too. I think that's also fearful. But I've experienced similar things where just letting people know what my dreams are or what I'm wanting to do, they challenge me on it. I actually I think this show is a good example of that. I don't know if you knew this, but in college, I had a television talk show. I was going to be the next Barbara Walters, and that was my career path, and everybody thought that that's what I was supposed to do. I ended up not getting a job in that field and took a sales customer service job, and fast forward 30 years, here I am doing what I'm doing.
And now you're being the Krista Moore instead of
Barbara Walters. Kind of bored in the company, just a little bit bored, and boredom to me is like the world's greatest evil. I don't work well in that environment. And I thought, what can I do different? And I'm like, well, I always wanted to have my own show. Well, I think I will. What do I call it? Oh, I'll call it the Krista Moore Show because I can. And
because you can.
Because I can. And that to me was a kind of a very liberating and I don't make any money. And this isn't like where I have sponsors that are paying me or guests that are paying me. I'm doing it because I love to do it. And to your point early on, it's because of the impact. By you and I having this conversation, whoever's listening to it is going to learn something from it. And we're going to have an impact on them in a positive way. And by doing it through video, and doing it in a way that can be shared and re-listened to, and it's out there forever, then we could impact so many people just by them listening to this conversation. And so I'm putting that out there.
Strategic fashion.
I think you challenged me. You said, well, it could be bigger. You could be, the Barbara Walters of whatever.
Raleigh Durham, but be the Krista Moore of that. I think if Barbara Walters gets you started, I'm sure you're the sum of more than just your love of Barbara Walters. I'm sure there are a lot of people who influence you, and you're that unique mix of all these people that you admire.
Maybe I need you to help me with my story and create my brand. Voila.
Voila.
Yeah. Let's close by telling us some exciting things about your book. I saw something online about this being in Barnes and Noble in your hometown. And I was very excited for you. That's a big deal. So tell us how it's doing and what fun you're having sharing this book with others.
Oh, it's awesome. I'm so proud of this book. It's the thing I'm most proud of that I've created in my whole career. And it is doing really well. When it debuted, it became an Amazon bestseller in 4 categories. It was a hot new release in 7 categories. So it's doing really well. I'm actually, as we speak, putting the finishing touches on the audiobook. So it will be available on Audible very soon. So feel free to check back for that. So I'm excited for people to be able to listen as they're traveling, maybe over the holidays, but just really excited to be out there. I'm going to speak at my hometown Barnes & Noble later this month. And as Krista, you just mentioned, it was so fun. I was home visiting family, and a family friend came into my dad's store and said, Annie's books at Barnes & Noble. There's a whole display. We went, what?
I love it.
so we went and I shot this great video that sort of shows it, but believe it or not, they had 50 copies in the store, and it was in the window, and I was like, all right, I'm done. I've peaked. I'm out. Like,
Yeah, you've arrived.
And that's, I think it's a good sort of call out for you if you're listening to this, watching this, which is, I didn't say that I'm in every Barnes & Noble in this country. Like, I'm not. I'm in my hometown, Barnes & Noble. And I feel like some people we have to be New York Times bestsellers, or we have to be in every Barnes & Noble. And those are great to have big goals, but like it feels really good to be in one Barnes & Noble and to have my family going and checking it out. And sometimes it just takes you can have small goals and have them feel great and be really proud of them. And I know some people that's a huge goal. So it's, some people might look at that and go, well, I'm only in one Barnes & Noble. And I'm like, I'm in one Barnes & Noble. So it's all how you're going to look at it.
It's all about the perspective.
Absolutely. And it's something to celebrate. So wherever you make those milestones happen, even if it's something little or something big, but maybe it's not as big as other people would want it to be or what you think it's supposed to be, like, celebrate it anyway.
Yep. There's definitely time for celebration. So yes. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'd like to share some information about some contact information. Is that okay? So that anyone that wants to reach out to you can certainly do that. Let me go ahead and put that up on the screen.
Great.
Do you want to let me just tell us a little bit, where's the best way to reach you, connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can reach me. I will go ahead and stop sharing my webcam. My email address is annie@greateststorycreative.com. My business is at greateststorycreative.com. And if you'd love to learn more about the book, just go to permissiontotry.com.
That's great. Well, Annie, thank you so much for joining us today. And I really do appreciate you taking the time out. I think that our guests have learned a ton, and hopefully they'll go out and get the book. And it definitely is kind of like your personal cheerleader. That's how I see this.
Well, excellent. Thanks so much for having me, Krista. This was great.
Take care. See ya.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.